everybody. Welcome to the Burress Law, Life, and Friends podcast, episode 22. I'm your host, Jason Burress, and with me, one of my really, really good buddies, Kyle Carlton.
Hey, everyone.
How are you doing?
Good. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Good to see you. We've got a blizzard rolling through.
Yeah, my wife said that you're trying to make me one of your clients when I started driving over here.
That's right. So we're going to eventually get into estate planning talk, law firm talk. Kyle owns a fantastic, what I would call a wealth preservation, estate planning, business law firm. You may have a better definition, but for now, that is that's what I think of when I think of Kyle. Great business, great law firm, great lawyer, SMU lawyer. So I mean, you have to be great.
Bear the curse. So.
Absolutely. So we'll get into that. But before we get into the law, let's just talk about the life. Tell me, where'd you grow up? Give me kind of your backstory.
Yeah. So grew up in Coppell, Texas. Mom lived there. Dad always lived kind of around that area.
That's generic.
And
Coppell, Texas.
Yeah. Coppell was a one stoplight town back then. We thought it was a big deal when we got our first grocery store, and watched it grow from that to being the ritzy suburb, I guess it is today.
Yes, indeed.
And now I call Prosper home. I have two kids, a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old, who keep me on my toes. And between them and the law practice, that pretty much eats up most of our time.
I understand.
We like to sail and travel all we can, and try to have a goal that my son has a passport stamp for every year of his life until he turns 18. And I guess now that I have a 2-year-old daughter, I have to make the same goal for her too.
I love it. That's actually one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. And of course, as always, we never go over the topics ahead of time. So you don't know what's coming.
No clue.
Okay, so I view you as like a super successful guy, period. But you were kind of, in my view, that way all the way through, because I know that you went to Texas A&M, probably harder to get into now than it was then, but not easy back then. So, I mean, tell me what you were into in grade school, high school.
Yeah, grade school, high school for me, best marked was probably leadership activities. So, student body vice president and, head of my Boy Scout troop and, leadership within the youth group and that sort of thing growing up. And I think that kind of pilfers through. I mean, if you talk about things that I really want to push my kids on, it would be leadership. Learning how to navigate people's situations, learning how to diffuse situations, learning how to walk into a place where you don't know people and, walk out with some really good friends. Take charge of a situation that may not be, the best in the world or whatnot and solve that problem. That to me is what makes successful business people. That's to me what makes successful people in life. So.
Yeah, you I don't know if you saw the podcast. We had Jamie Walk. Have you met Jamie? You probably met
once before.
Okay,
yes.
So Jamie, Jim Pollard. You probably met Jim. And who else? We had Reed Fisher. You probably haven't met Reed, but these are guys who they're people persons, and they're really high level. They make relationships, and you're cut from that same cloth where you're able to do that. And I would assume that. You probably had some strong mentors growing up. Who were they?
Well, it's funny you say that about, being kind of people. For me, I will never forget one of my mentors growing up. I'm young, gung-ho lawyer, coming fresh out of law school kind of deal. And I'm going to some networking event or whatnot. And he, I mentioned something like, I'm going to go network the heck out of this event. And he looks at me and he gets this almost angry look on his face. And he says, Kyle, don't ever network. Go and make friends. And years later, I was in an interview with a law firm. I was thinking about going back into a big law firm environment. And I'm sitting in this very intimidating conference room, a big law firm, and I've got 7 to 10 lawyers on the other side, 2 senior partners and a bunch of associates. And the first words out of the mouth of the senior partner on the other side of the table was, how'd you do it? And I had no idea what he was talking about. I didn't even know that I'd done anything. And I asked him, I said, well, what do you mean? And he goes, you are this old and you've got a practice book of this size. How did you do it? And he literally turned in the rest of the young associates sitting at the table and said, I've been trying to get them to do it for years and they won't. He said, so why did you do this versus versus other people? And I told that story of this mentor who said, don't ever go and network, go and make friends. And I said that's what really defined my practice in many ways, was being able to walk into a situation and seek to make deep relationships and make friends. That mentor expanded on this over time, where he said, look, networking contacts, they're looking for you to reciprocate. And if you don't immediately, they'll be on to the next person. And when you screw up, and you will screw up, he said, a networking contact will move on to the next person. A friend will give you grace. They will send you their work for life. And so, for me, it was a matter of going out and making friends.
Who taught you that when you were growing up? Who was that person in your life?
Well, the person that was the mentor in that example was actually my stepfather, who was a very successful business person in his own right, and a very good salesman. But a lot of his sales was all relationship. I mean, he had friends even after he sold his company and retired that, were people that he had sold business to and had been clients of his for years and years and years. Outside of that, I grew up, I had a single mom growing up until I was about 12. I watched her work very hard as an executive at a direct mail agency and kind of learned some work ethic through her. And just a number of other family and friends that were really, really influential in my life. An uncle who was the troop master at, our local Boy Scout troop, who really pushed us on leadership things, really pushed us to, heck, most Boy Scout troops, the adults plan the camp out and, the kids just attend. They made us plan it. They made us deal with the problems. When dinner didn't get cooked right or whatever, it was ours to figure out. So
you were involved in student government. Any sports that you were into?
I did jack of all trades and a master of none. My wife was the college volleyball player. For me,
which school?
She was at Gannon University up in the Northeast. It's in Erie, Pennsylvania. Okay. And so smaller D2 school, but she's Miss Hyper competitive sports player. I was a swimmer primarily, did that in cross country, bounced around a little bit between other sports. I had enough athletic ability that all the coaches wanted me to come and do their sport, and not enough interest and probably not enough skill as well to really excel at any one of them. So,
when did you decide that you were going to attend A&M? Were you evaluating a bunch of different schools, or was it always A&M?
So both my parents went to A&M, and my dad has 4 degrees from there. My mom was one of the first women to go to A&M. Back then, you either had to be married to an Aggie or you had to be a professor's daughter. Okay. And in fact, she went to Tech for her first year and then transferred in. And when she went to register for classes, this is somebody with a 4.0 in biochemistry at that time. They made her go home to get her marriage license to prove she was married to my dad before they'd let her register for classes. So very different from the A&M I went to, where it's 50% women. My mom says it was great, and she didn't open a door for 4 years. She was one of a few women on campus. Yeah. Just so happened to also be married, but A&M kind of grew up being brainwashed. I actually fought it.
You do?
I fought going there in high school.
Oh, okay.
Wanted to define my own path and all that sort of thing. And truth be told, on the stack of applications, the college applications on my desk in my room, I always kept the University of Texas one, or the Texas University as A&M calls it, one on top, just to keep my parents on their toes and let them know that I was looking elsewhere. In the end, going back to that leadership theme, A&M really believes that half of your education comes from not what you do in the classroom, but what you do outside of it. And they really push you on your involvements and the things you do, leadership wise. And that was a really good training ground for me as well.
So I took the kids to their very first college visit a few months ago.
I've heard about this on your podcast. Yep. I've been meaning to send a T-shirt over to all your kids.
Which was A&M, and it was actually the first time I'd ever been to College Station, and it was a blast. Assuming your experience was a very good one?
Very much so. Yeah, I loved A&M. And great cost of living, cheap beer and cheap food, and the values and kind of the ethos of A&M of service and leadership, and really kind of putting everything from country and community at the forefront of what you think about. I think is really, really honorable.
Heck of a concept, right?
Yeah. So, that it was a great experience for me. I want my kids to go to the absolute best college they can. If that happens to be A&M, I will be a very, very happy camper. My son, who goes to St. Paul's Episcopal in Prosper, came home when he was 3.5 years old, holding up the UT symbol and saying "Hook 'em horns," and he saw that it got a rise out of his mother and I, and he has been holding that over our heads ever since. So I guess this is karma come back to bite me. Hopefully he'll see the error of his ways and come over to the A&M side.
So after A&M, you then attend SMU. You're one of the smart kids because you do the joint MBA JD program, true?
If you say that 5 times fast, it comes out glutton for punishment. Now, I started at Baylor. I did a year of law school at Baylor. I learned I did not want to be a litigator like you.
Yeah.
And knew that I wanted to do some more business-oriented type stuff. SMU had one of the top 10 entrepreneurship programs in the nation, which was what I was very interested in. And so all roads led to Dallas. And ended up at SMU. I did the joint JD MBA program. Really, really good experience. SMU, one of the things that I can really, give them kudos on is their ability to plug you in with the business community and to let you see what happens in real life versus what simply, happens in the classroom or, in academia. So that was a neat experience.
Yeah, sure. So when I went to law school, I went in thinking I was for sure going to do what you do. And it's just strange how little things change everything. And I interview with business firms and get offers, and then I go and interview with Dreyer, and he offers less money, but there he is in Levi's and representing these awesome companies and doing products, high-level personal injury work. And he's like, you come here and you're going to be able to hit the ground running. You're going to be able to take depositions on day one and be involved in hearings and try cases and all these things. And all of a sudden, my
paradigm shift.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's just.
Well, I'll be honest. I loved the mental chess aspect of litigation. Like that part was really attractive to me. What I found I liked more, though, and I still get that mental chess negotiation aspect out of a lot of my practice, but at the end of the day, I found that I really enjoyed getting to build things with clients. You get called when something has gone really, really wrong. My job is to help things not go wrong. My job is to make it so that when they do go wrong, you're as protected as possible. And you talk about finding your callings in life. That's something I get real passionate about. At the end of the day, when we talk about business planning, estate planning, anything like that, it's all about protecting the individual and their family, and that's the part that I found I really enjoyed. I'd love to tell you I was a genius and I knew what I wanted back then. I didn't. I honestly considered litigation. I interviewed with a bunch of firms that wanted me to come and do litigation. But at the end of the day, I found I kind of liked more of that, structures and negotiation of business deals and that sort of thing, over the litigation side of things.
Yeah, and it's funny because in our practices, they're so different, but a lot of times we hire you to help us on an aspect of like a wrongful death case, for instance.
I was thinking about one that we had recently where you called me up and said, "Tell me what these people have."
Right. And it's funny too, because I'm talking to you and that I know which case you're talking about, and And I'm talking about, so here's how I would attack it. And you're talking about how, it may have been set up to defend. And it's.
Yep. And within about 30 minutes, I could tell you what the structure of their life was and kind of what the weaknesses in the castle walls were. That to me is really fascinating. So
yeah, that's super fun. So, but you've done a lot of different things. Like correct me if I'm wrong, but haven't you taken companies like through IPO and?
So our practice is probably best defined by who our client is.
Okay.
And the client is going to be that business owner, professional, entrepreneur type. And where we're going to get really, really nerdy is drawing out the org chart of their life and helping them figure out how all of that works together. So that's going to be sophisticated estate planning on top, trusts of all different flavors and wills and family holding companies and that sort of thing. That's also going to be, hey, I'm going to take your operating company. I'm going to break it into 4 pieces, and here's why. How do I make you more bulletproof from an asset protection standpoint? How do I make you more tax efficient? How do I position you for that sale you want in 5 years? Those are the things that we really enjoy. What I tell people is, in terms of how our practices, perhaps overlap, I'm the castle builder. The analogies here of I'm the castle builder. It's my job to build the walls. It's my job to help figure out how to protect you. I'm not your war general. You're the war general. You're the litigator. Your job is when the client gets attacked to help protect them. My job is to help build the castle. My job also, from an entrepreneur perspective, they're constantly conquering new lands. My job is to, they're blazing trails. My job is to go behind them and lay the brick on those trails. To make sure that as they take, as they have more and more success, I know exactly, how to make that success permanent for them. How do I make them more secure? And, fortunately, we live here in Texas. Texas is a state that is founded on people running from their creditors. So you can, literally look back in our history. Stephen F. Austin's pitch for why you leave certain places and come to Texas was free land from the Mexican government and get away from your creditors there. So we're a state founded on people running from their creditors. That kind of permeates throughout our personality as Texans and through our law as well. So with just a little bit of help, I can do a lot of good for clients.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I'm one of those clients because you obviously have represented the firm and me and family members and so forth. But I was actually having, it's called like Plan on a Page or something. It's our new CPA team. We've been with them a couple of years, I guess, year and a half maybe. Because my old CPA, whom Linda, retired. And so I have a new CPA group. And they know you very well. They've worked with you many times and all this. So I'm having this.
Ironically, we came at it. You found them through a different avenue, but I have absolutely done a lot of work with them. So,
but I'm having this meeting with them today, and of course I'm telling them for the first time, like, okay, so we got the headquarters building, we got our current building, but I bought this other building that's in the middle of construction, and we're working on that right now, just blowing their minds, right? And they're like, well. Does anybody know this? And I go, I'm pretty sure that I mentioned Kyle. I'm pretty sure I told Kyle. And I go, by the way, I think one of my business partners, one of my partners may put in 10% for this deal because and they're like, oh my word. I go, don't worry about it. Just call Kyle and we'll figure it all out after the fact.
It's your job to blaze the trail. It's my job to lay the brick coming after you.
Yeah, because that's the comfort level is I know what I'm trying to do. A lot of it happens sort of last minute and spur of the moment, and just opportunities arrive. You take it, and then you're like, you need somebody in your life, in your business life, who can dot the I's and cross the T's.
And that's kind of where we come in to help. It's a very normal call for us to get that call and go, hey, I already did blank. Do I need to document that?
Yeah.
And of course, we shake our heads and go, yes, we do. You're out blazing trails. Our job is to come behind you and lay the brick.
Yeah, and I love your the wealth preservation side when you're doing the estate planning, and you've got the pool boy clause which I love. I mean, the pool boy clause. I mean, yeah, I mean, you have a really unique, down-to-earth way to interject really difficult issues and make it where anybody would agree to it, right? I mean, does that make sense?
You got to have a little levity when you're talking about death and taxes. So there's got to be some jokes here and there. What you're talking about, it's not just pool boys. There's strippers as well, Jason. So we've got the stripper and pool boy clause, which is
focused on the pool boy.
Yeah, fair enough. But what you're talking about is it's not uncommon for a business owner, or their spouse to pass away, and the two of them have worked so hard to accumulate what they have. And so spouse number one passes away. Spouse two comes back to me after a very reasonable period of mourning. They come back after swearing they'll never get married again. And they go, never thought this would happen, but I found love twice in life. I'm getting married. Spouse three comes into the picture. Spouse 2 and 3 swore up and down that they would not disinherit each other's kids. Then spouse 2 passes away. Spouse 3, the one that I didn't know at the beginning, comes back to me a few years later and says, I love my stepkids, but they didn't come to Christmas last year. And I got this issue with my kid and I need a little extra funds over there. I'm going to quietly write my stepkids out of the picture. Yeah. A good estate plan is going to deal with things like that. A good estate plan, it's not strippers and pool boys in reality. It's life happening. And how do we make sure that what the two spouses intended at the outset becomes what's effectuated at the end? That's really what you're looking for.
And the other thing is, I have personal experience on this, but when death happens, I'm telling you, people go crazy. And you think like stuff that like a year earlier or 5 years later, you wouldn't care anything about it. But right in that moment, you care what kind of gun it is. You care what kind of credit card it is. You care what kind of vehicle it is. I mean, it's weird, right?
One of the very first estates I ever took on, mom and dad have been married for 25 plus years. He had a few kids from a prior marriage. And if you'd asked her before he passed how those kids would behave when he passed away, she would have said, they are my kids. They will protect me, at all cost. And I'm not joking when I say 30 days after he passed away, they sent her a spreadsheet where they had mentally walked around the house in their head and made a list of everything they knew that was there. And they had put values associated with it and said, where's our cut? So you've heard me say this before. I have a joking, $2,500 rule. And it's not so much a joke, but if the amount in question is above $2,500, you can bet people will change when somebody passes away.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Unfortunately, that's the place where they start hiring lawyers. And we have a tendency to screw things up.
Sure.
So
one of the things, like probably the most common text that is exchanged between me and you is from me, including you and someone else. And it's like, dear Lee, meet Kyle. Kyle is one of my most trusted associates who blah, 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 blah. Dear Lee, it's that type of thing. And I'm making an introduction. And 90% of the time, whether that person's worth $10 million or $10,000, they have come to me and said, hey, do you know somebody who could just help me draft a simple will? And I'm like, you probably don't need just a simple will, because chances are you're going to be maimed, disfigured, lose your mental capacity. It's not going to be death. It's going to be something far worse, and you're going to need more than that. But so I don't have to get into it.
I'm going to borrow this explanation, by the way.
But talk about that for a minute, because
when we talk about estate preservation, wealth preservation, which is really the business I'm in, it's not just what happens when you pass away. Honestly, where I see the biggest erosion of estate value, where I see the biggest pain point for the family, where I see the biggest fights happen, is when you're incapacitated, or when you get sued. These are things that actually end up being the bigger issues. Death, yeah, it matters. People change when somebody passes away. But at the end of the day, when we talk about planning, if we don't cover those other topics,
right?
We've left a big gaping hole. We've covered one of 5 things. We've given you the 20% solution rather than the 100%.
Yeah, and to personalize this more, I think when you have someone who is successful, has assets, who is in control of things on a day-to-day basis, when you're making those plans in the case of mental incapacity, I mean, I've been there with you. We've talked about this stuff in front of my wife and things like that. And I'm telling you, there's like committees that you form and I'm like, look, let me tell you something. It can't just be your dad on this committee. I want my all-time best friend. He's got to say I'm crazy. And I want my second all-time best friend. And I want you on that committee. And I mean, because it's pretty cool the way you in particular put it together, because it's this joint group of people that love you, but I mean, they have to tell the truth. Because I mean, and that could happen to me one day where I'm 9 years older than my wife. But by God, if they make that call, there's going to be some people in my camp that are going to have to say it.
Well, yeah,
and I will haunt them if they're not correct.
That's a great example of what proper planning can do for you. If you as a business owner had nothing in place, and you were to become incapacitated, Jason gets in a bad car accident tomorrow, hits his head real hard, and all of a sudden you think blackjack is a wise investment strategy. In that instance, if you didn't have anything in place, we would have to go to court. I'd have to get a court overseeing guardianship over you. I'd have to put all of your financial information on public record. There's going to be multiple law firms involved in that guardian proceeding that we have to do. And then there's going to be regular reporting requirements back to the court. And that judge, you don't know their political persuasions. They don't have the time to get to know what's really going on in your family. There's going to be a really intrusive process where they try to, but ultimately they're not going to really know. And so what we do a lot of times with clients like you is we kind of self-select out of that, and we place ourselves in the hands of a trust committee, who are people that we know and love according to rules we set up. And they're the ones that end up serving in that crazy committee type, scenario. Now, it's usually in yours, for example, I hope I'm not revealing too much, it's only by unanimous vote. So you better be pretty crazy before they vote you off your rocker.
Because I know a lot of secrets about Clifton Finley too. Clifton Finley, I mean, I could put you in prison. I mean, you know that.
So you're going to have to be really crazy before that person votes you crazy. Right. But at the end of the day, I would much rather, especially, as a business owner, you don't want what's going on in your personal life aired out in public court records. So we get to make those decisions now around a conference room table with people you love, with people that you selected before you were incapacitated, so that we don't have to erode your business value. We don't have to force public disclosure of everything that's going on in your personal life. We can do those things privately. We can do those things more efficiently. We can do them quicker, so that we can preserve as much wealth as possible for your family.
And the other thing that surprises me a little bit, whether a buddy of mine's worth $10,000 or $10 million, I will get calls and they'll be like, hey, I'm especially the 10 million guy. Mm-hmm. It's always this. I am embarrassed to death to tell you this, but
I know
I've never had a will. It's always a will, right? I've never had a will and this and that. And I am just so embarrassed, but do you have anybody, it's that type of thing. I'm like, oh yeah. And by the way, I hear that all the time. Mm-hmm. The $10,000 guy, that doesn't bother me, but I was once, in those same shoes where it was like, I felt bad about it. I was like, gosh, I had something that I think you saw what I drafted. Mm-hmm. That's another thing, right? You need to leave this to the professionals. This is why
you don't practice outside your area.
You need to leave it to your professional estate planner. But that does happen. I'm like, don't be embarrassed at all. I get it. You're busy. You're trying to get from point A to point B, and you think you're 10 foot tall and bulletproof. But I'm in the business that allows me to know that we're not 10 foot tall and bulletproof. And so, I mean, that's just a real thing.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, if you actually, I'm a numbers guy. So if you look at statistics, the statistics show that 50% of the U.S. does not have any estate planning whatsoever.
Yep.
I mean, they literally don't even have a will. I think if you lower that subset down to business owners and entrepreneurs, professionals, and you include in that subset people that did a will 10 years ago and they have no idea what it says, that number would jump from 50% to 90%. I mean, that's the normal call that we get. People go, hey, I know I need to do something. I have no clue what to do. I think I just need a simple will. And we start kind of unpacking that. And it's worth saying, I mean, our firm overall, I mentioned earlier, is best defined by our client. And that business owner, entrepreneur, professional type, they don't view the estate world and the business world as two separate things. They view it as one big world, and they straddle the line between those two. Our profession, the legal industry, divides the two. I think that does a real disservice to the client. Like I said, they don't view it as two worlds. They view it as one big world, and those two are very interconnected. And so we say, look, we have to come alongside you and straddle the line as well. So, honestly, while we get branded as estate planners, I try very intentionally to brand us as estate and business planners. Yeah. If you look at our revenue on a monthly basis, we're going to be about a third estate planning. We're going to be about a third business planning. So, various entity formations and partnership agreements and all that kind of stuff. And then the final third is going to be kind of general counsel type work. You're going to call us when you have when you're buying a new piece of real estate.
Right.
We're going to get that phone call. We're going to make sure that it gets put in the right place, that it's in the most tax efficient spot, that it fits into your overall plan. And at a minimum, we may say, hey, we don't do that. Like, you call me with an intellectual property problem tomorrow. I'm going to say, hey, I don't do intellectual property, but I work with Sally who does. I'm going to pull in Sally. I'm going to make sure she does her job right. I'm going to make sure it goes in the right spot in your plan. She's a really good attorney at intellectual property, but she would get the planning part wrong. So we're going to make sure that it works with your overall plan.
So how do listeners and viewers find you?
You can always go to our website, txwealthlawyers.com. You can Google me if you want to, Kyle Carlton. You'll immediately find our website. And just click on the link and you can schedule an appointment. Obviously they can always text you. I know everybody's got your number as well. You're the Kevin Bacon of McKinney. So
and telephone number? What's your office number?
469-647-3701.
All right. In our remaining time, I want to touch two topics that really impressed me about you. The first is...
Now I'm really scared.
Yeah. The first is, so we started our foundation with your help. Of course, you did all the drafting and all that stuff and gave guidance. But you've had a foundation for years, a charitable foundation. I would like you to talk about what does it do? How'd you come up with it? Things like that.
Yeah. So we just have a small little nonprofit that runs out of our office. At the end of the day, we really believe in giving back. That's a big part of who we are as a family. It's a big part of who we are as a firm. Truthfully, when I went to A&M, I was dead set on the fact I was going to seminary. And I had argued it up and down with my parents, who probably knew me better than I knew myself at that point. I joke and say I found the Lord and went to law school instead. But after I went to the dark side and became a lawyer, I mean, I couldn't have gone into business if I didn't view it as serving some greater purpose. And so we have a small little nonprofit called the W.E. Heinz Foundation. It's named after my great-grandfather. I needed a name. And I didn't want to put my name on it, so I used the Heinz Foundation to do that.
Sounds so official and rich. So
Absolutely.
Is that the Heinz?
That was the other part. We wanted some good branding.
Yeah, sure.
But the Heinz Foundation, I mean, we do a number of things. We help clients along the way, like we've helped you over at times and whatnot. But ultimately, what we really enjoy doing there is helping what I'm going to call social entrepreneurs. Somebody who's got some great vision, some great desire to go and do something charitable. At the end of the day, forming a nonprofit is not an easy thing. It takes time. It takes anywhere from 12 to 24 months just to get everything through the IRS. And then once you've got that approval, it takes ongoing maintenance and administration. And a lot of those clients that have that great charitable idea, they don't need that burden. They need to go and test out their charitable idea. So we kind of serve in that incubator type role for nonprofit, ideas. Somebody with a great way they're going to change the world. We get nerdy about that, and we let them file a DBA so that they can operate under whatever name they want to operate under. And the hope is that they exist in our infrastructure for a short-term period, and eventually that thing grows into whatever it is, and we can roll them out into their own charity. And so we try to come alongside people and help them there. I mean, we kind of looked at it and said, what are we good at, and how can we help? And at the end of the day, I'm good at the legal work. I'm good at filing and accounting and all of that kind of internal stuff that tends to be a real burden for an entrepreneur. It tends to be a real burden for something who's trying to start some charitable cause. So we kind of say, hey, how can we make that as easy and as seamless as possible so you have a springboard to test out your idea, to see how it works, and then from there to tweak it, and hopefully we roll you out into your own charity.
Great. That's awesome. I'm so impressed with what you've done with your charity, helping others. It's super meaningful. So, and thank you for helping us.
Absolutely. It's been a lot of fun. We love the picnics every year, and getting to watch the scholarships and all that kind of stuff. I mean, ultimately we got to serve as a springboard for you. I like serving as that springboard for others.
Yep. And you've helped us as well. You've donated as well. We're now at 14 scholarships for $42,000.
That's great. And I love the underdog theme. That to me is kind of that to me is what gets it. So
yep. I can't wait to get where we're going. I know we have a long ways to go, but I'm excited. Last thing I want to talk to you about.
Okay.
The traveling. I'm so impressed. And as I was sitting earlier this week in an office in Sherman, Texas, trying to get passports, man, you've done it right. You've figured out the travel thing, how important that is. Talk about that a little bit.
So when it comes to travel, I can tell you growing up, for me, I grew up in this kind of suburbanite bubble, which was a great place to grow up. And I got a great education. I grew up around good people. I had a really good foundation laid. But it was a bubble. And ultimately, I didn't understand. I didn't have the perspective offered by travel. I think that travel is an education that is unmatched. Even if it's just you can see that the toilets look a little different in Asia than they look here in the U.S. or whatnot. I love the notion that most of the toilets in other parts of the world operate by a foot pedal versus using a lever kind of BS. But ultimately, I think travel offers perspective, and so we try to push ourselves to travel. We try to push our kids to travel. Like I said at the beginning of this, I mean, I had a goal when I had my first son that he was going to have a passport stamp for every year of his life until he turns 18. And, I'm a year behind because of COVID right now. So I've got some catching up to do. Mm-hmm. But we're pushing for that.
Well, if you need some backup in Belize, just know that we're about to have our passports figured out. And
but Belize is one of our favorite spots. I would tell you, if you really want your kids to travel, don't just push for the passport. Push to get them their global entry, because that makes passport clearing and all that sort of thing a lot easier. My son looks like a international man of mystery on his global entry picture and that sort of thing. We love to travel. I think it offers just differing perspectives. And when we travel, we try to we do our fair share of the resorts and all that kind of stuff too. But I want to go to places where I can really absorb the culture, where I can see how things are done, where I feel like I know people by the end of the week. Kind of something new to learn and conquer. So
I love it. Anything else you want to get off your chest?
No. I mean, I'm glad I could, help break dry January for you. I'm just going to go ahead and turn you in. I don't know if they'll edit that out or not.
I'm going to get grounded when I get home. But for now, it's been a pleasure, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
Good to see you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you guys for tuning in, whether it's viewing on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast channel. Be sure and do that whole subscribe, comment, hit the notifications thing, and check us out next time. It's